Hello, everyone. Welcome to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor speaking to you from Sheltering in Place, New Orleans, Louisiana, along with Rachi Messing speaking from Sheltering in Place, Tel Aviv, Israel. Is that correct, Rack? You're in
Right
Tel Aviv?
outside Tel Aviv. Yep.
Right. And our guest today is my old friend, Rocky's new friend, Robert Browning. You are sheltering in place in San Francisco.
Brownstone. I'm not Browning the poet, but yes, I'm in San Francisco.
Hey, you guys are old friends.
Yes, I haven't been around that long, but close.
I was literally having a conversation just before we got on with somebody about Browning Moran. So obviously it stuck.
Yeah.
You can see,
Sure.
you can see over my shoulder back there. He's
Oh, yeah. I can.
I must have felt the psychic tug. Or I got serious cabin fever, which is far more likely these days. Hey, just before I start, Robert, we want to make sure that we offer a little potential disclaimer to really everybody in the world that this is a production of Rocky and Tom. It's the Rocky Tom Horror Picture Show, and we are not representing any of the individual entities who we work with. In Rocky's case, that would be the Microsoft Corporation. In my case, that would be well, a whole bunch of software companies who I do contract work with. So this is not representative of anything or any position of any of them. We're here as free agents and looking for a long-term contract with at least a 3-year term to it. So Robert, tell us, you're as all of us sheltering in place. I'm on day 51. What day is it for you? Do you know?
It's probably about day 70 or so. No, could it be 70?
Yeah,
at least, because we shut down around March 10th.
Yeah, you're ahead of us in.
So, yeah, San Francisco and California on the whole have been very proactive throughout.
Rocky, what about you? How long for you?
Yeah, so we're somewhere right around there. I think March 10th, 11th was when we pretty much went into lockdown.
Right.
So,
right. And Robert, at the same time, you were transitioning from working at a big firm. I don't know if you want to acknowledge their name or not. That's up to you.
I will, sure.
Okay.
So I was at Fenwick and West for 20 years, and I'm now doing something I'm launching something I thought about throughout that stretch. Fenwick is based in Silicon Valley and has had a history of 45 years of representing startups that range from Apple to Intuit to Facebook to Twitter to GoPro to a bunch of startups and other tech companies. And I was in a variety of roles there. I went into IT the middle 7 years, and all 4 of my roles involved working with clients and the firm and advising both on tech tools and on all things in law and tech, eDiscovery, privacy, etc. And I have about to launch a law firm, a tech consulting company, and a CLE provider. So yes, definitely in transition. I had planned this before COVID. The firm and I agreed to my exit plan in January. And my last day probably ever as an employee was April 24th.
Okay. So go ahead, Rocky.
Yeah, let's, I'm curious, it sounds like the companies that you guys were representing were the typical tech startups. What is it about it that actually got you into the technology? Like, as an attorney, most attorneys, while nowadays they may grow up with tech, but technology isn't necessarily the first thing that you're thinking about when you come out of law school and, I want to go into eDiscovery, or I want to be the guy who everyone goes to for the technical things. So what brought you to technology?
So that's a great question. I had already been a lawyer for 13 years in 1999. And yes, there's a painting on a wall of me like in that book that looks very craggy and old. No comments from the peanut gallery, please. But I saw an ad in the Recorder, which is an ALM publication now, and it was then a newspaper. And Fenwick wanted someone who'd been a database designer, a law professor, and a business litigator. And I had 2 to 3. There was no one in captivity that had done all 3. And maybe now I'm one of the only people that's done all 3, although maybe there are a few others. So the role intrigued me. It looked like it was training young lawyers in the litigation group and building platforms and databases of good examples of briefs and this and that. And I'd been teaching at a research writing and analysis, a moot court at law schools for years. And so I went for it. And it was somewhat luck because Bill Fenwick, who was one of the founders of the firm, back in his law school days in Vanderbilt, he wrote in 1968, he wrote his senior paper, a law journal article predicting the internet and Lexis and Westlaw when none of that was known to or exist. The latter two didn't exist. So he's a visionary. He still is. He's now retired, but he had a secret mission for the role. And it was both serendipity and fate and my own willingness to learn, basically. He wanted to pump a lawyer / teacher's brain with as much computer knowledge as possible and see where it went. And in the interview, when I first met with him, when I got the role, he laid out 3 goals, and that really has been what my career's been. He's a genius, and really it was he piqued my interest. The first goal was to get all the lawyers in the firm being as high tech as possible, no matter what background they had or how much or how little interest they had in tech, given our client base. Then to host client data at our firm to tether the clients to us, and then to leverage that to do what I started calling full service for the clients, not just the standard litigation, tax, corporate IP work, but branch out to advising them on their data. So really it was his interest and my willingness to learn and teach that combined. So I give him a lot of credit. Also a fellow named Matt Kessner, who Tom may know, who's my age, who's now also left Fenwick and is doing a variety of interesting things. He is super bright as well, and he had been a trial lawyer and had become the chief technology officer, had done a big leap. So the two of them really had my back and piqued my interest and pushed me on my way. They will say that it was my own blood and sweat that, pumped my brain. But in any event, that's how it happened back starting in early 2000.
2000. Okay, great. And mission accomplished?
Oh yes, they did not believe that I would end up doing hundreds of webinars, conference chairing, speeches, articles, and also from the ground up, frankly, not a lot of understanding from some colleagues, built a practice that was part IT and part law called electronic information management.
Right.
What I ended up doing, the main thing I've been doing with clients in those 20 years was advising them on records retention and destruction, which really is information management, with a litigation and an eDiscovery perspective, always thinking about what might happen downstream and the philosophy that less is more, and then a sprinkle of data privacy and a smattering of cybersecurity as well as things started getting more complex. So yes, the training that Mr. Fenwick was willing to have the firm pay for back in early 2000s really paid off for me. I took database design, HTML development, etc. It's virtual basic training. So when I started talking to higher tech clients about all kinds of data issues and relational databases, how they anonymize or pseudonymize data, how systems integrated with each other, the IT people would be shocked. I mean, I would often bring Kevin Moore, who was our IT director and became our our chief information security officer back at Fenwick. Or I'd always have him on the line if I got stumped, if I felt I needed to. But I really learned how to be a translator, and I would only do projects, actually. I had the luxury, and that's a credit to the firm. If I didn't get to know anything about the IT, I didn't like giving a template or trying to give broad generic advice, because as you guys know more than most people, especially both of you, no two environments are alike, and they're ever changing.
Right. Yep. Rocky, when we were preparing for this, had a great question, which is, if you weren't doing all of that now, what would you be doing?
Oh, if I hadn't gotten to this area, this hybrid, whatever I am, that's a great question. I would be doing a combination or one or all of the following 3 things. I'd be in local community musicals. I'd be singing in a rock band, running for office, and or writing books.
Cool. What do you play?
I don't play anything, but I do sing. If I stick in my range, I have a very good singer and I've got amazing volume. So I don't play an instrument though. I am going to take piano though. I've decided that would be a great thing to do. I started it long ago and it's time to get back to it. But I sing. That's my musical talent. And I dance, but my brother and sister were both professional ballet dancers and also in musicals. My sister on Broadway. Parents were both actors. And my dad was a Broadway stage manager and a company manager for foreign ballet companies. So I was raised in performing. So it doesn't surprise me that I've done all these talks and been up in front of people a lot, though I've never done it as my actual, the actual true performing arts. I've never done that.
So Tom, it sounds like what Robert's really saying is that if he weren't an attorney, wasn't into the technology, he'd be in a boy band.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, bingo.
I have this mental picture of you and Craig Ball and George Socha all doing like a Temptations act, you know.
That would be a sight to see. Yes, I can do the moonwalk though. I don't know that they could do that, but anyway.
Nice.
So, having been in the industry for as long as you've been in it, what's the biggest change that you've seen over the last 20 years?
So the biggest change, other than of course the volumes of data and the speed with which we can all create, I mean, aside from that, which we all know, and I assume our audience knows really well, I would say it's been the first wave of change was what people were calling Web 2.0, the wikis and blogs, which led to social media. That was, I guess you could call that 2 milestones, but that was a huge change. And of course, Mr. Fenwick had predicted that too. As soon as wikis and blogs came out, he sat me down in his office and he said, Bob, everyone's now a publisher. Remember that. Everyone's a publisher. So that was a big change. The other change that he also identified for me during that period, that let's say 6, 7, 8 year period, was that clients were not going to be coming to law firms. And in fact, we're already stopping coming to law firms for research memos or deep dives on, let's call it the basic and generic standards, what the rules of law are, because they could readily find that on the internet. I mean, if you think about it, it started by 2005 or so, pretty much every federal court was either on on Pacer or about to get on it, an electronic case management system. And at that point, FindLaw and other companies were serving up legal decision statutes, et cetera. The Cornell LII was doing that. So his point was that clients were going to be calling with some knowledge, and they're going to want to know something much more esoteric, and they're going to want your brain to be put to analytically to a more complex, more current, new issue. And I realized that even then some when the chair of our firm, Fenwick, Gordy Davidson, he's no longer chair, but he was chair for a long time. He's known as the consigliere of Silicon Valley because so many companies from Symantec to Intuit have started with him as their lawyer. They go to him, hey, we're thinking of starting a company. Here we go. He was in a board meeting in probably about 2005 or 2004, and was called a research and training attorney in litigation at the time. So people knew that if they sent around a question, I would quickly research it and try to, if I find an answer, I'd shoot it to the person. So he contacted me. It was when we first were having firm Blackberries and the like, and he said, they're talking about a case, a Delaware decision here in this board meeting, and I haven't heard about it. Find it for me. And I found something. He said, ooh, that's close, but it's not really it. Look again. I looked again. I found it. I sent him a PDF. And this was, again, back 2004, 2005. He sent back, that's it. I can tell it's it, but I can't read the whole PDF on my BlackBerry. I'll copy and paste the text. So what that made me realize is here's someone head of a then 250 attorney firm, brought in almost every major tech client in the Valley to our firm. And he felt like he needed to know an answer and be up to speed right then and there, or it would be a downer and he wouldn't look up to speed for the client. And the next wave, I would say, is what people are still calling emerging technology, more in the last 3 to 5 years. The widespread use of cloud tools and platforms like Salesforce and of collaborative communication tools like Slack, that has made a huge change. As you guys know, in the things you work on. So I'd say those are the three big changes: the Web 2.0, the expectations of clients of any service provider, why they're coming to them, and also now the new emerging technology. It's not really that new, at least not to the three of us, but still call it emerging.
Cool. So if you had, this is another Rocky question. I'm not taking credit for any.
Go ahead and steal it. Go for it.
If you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, technical or legal, living or dead, who would it be?
Other than you two, shameless kissing up. It would have to be Browning Marian, and I'm not just saying that because you mentioned his name. So Browning is someone. He's the one of very few people with whom I never actually worked in a firm or in any workplace, who had a huge influence on my career in multiple ways. Contemporaneous with the period where my interest got piqued in eDiscovery and privacy by various people at Fenwick. Browning saw me leading a panel or being on a panel or two at a conference where he was leading some panels. And like apparently he did with a lot of other people, who he started getting me to involved in other conferences. He got me involved in co-chairing a series of conferences for years with him for today's general counsel that were held as roundtables. And he and George Sosha and I believe David Kessler had come up with the format, which was conversational. And Tom, I know Tom actually from those colloquiums, because everyone sits in a big circle and you get to know what all these other people know. Yep. And Browning really was a Pied Piper of his excitement about new tools was evident. He'd sometimes do a session where all we talked about, what's the coolest app you're using that relates to eDiscovery or law or litigation, or just being a lawyer, just doing a lawyer's work, or just doing work in the workplace. So he was amazing in that regard. To be brutally frank, there was a period where my outward profile had zoomed past my profile within the firm, because a lot of people are like, well, what are Bill and Bob and Matt doing? We don't really get it. And so I was trying to get a promotion and an increase in salary, and I reached out to a few people out in the world, and Browning was the only one who answered immediately, called me up, told me his salary. And lastly, he was just engaging, as Tom knows. Rocky, I don't know if you knew Browning, but and he brought so many of us along in this field and looked after us. I was always raised to do for other people and look out for them. And the first lawyers I practiced with in New York were very good about teaching. I was talking to my daughter about that the other day, that's what got me interested in teaching. So, and I already been raised to do for others, and if it comes back from them, great. If not, it comes back from other people. But Browning really was the champion, the all-time all-star of doing that. He did it out of genuine like for people and love of learning and love of teaching. He just had indomitable energy, and he really brought a lot of us along, not just personally, but in terms of our thirst for knowledge and the sharing. And so especially in eDiscovery and anything related to it, he really was the ringleader, the Pied Piper, all that rolled into one. So it'd have to be Browning.
Cool. Rocky, I know we want to be mindful of time, but have you got any other burning desires?
Let's do a quick wrap-up question. I think so. This is a two-parter. Number one is, so you've left Fenwick now and heading out on your own, which of course coincided with the pandemic outbreak. So first of all, are you thinking to yourself, wow, am I insane? Or do you see this as an opportunity, a good time that things are changing anyway, and maybe it's actually a perfect time to go out on your own? That's number one, which leads to the next question of what's next. What do you see as the things that are happening that you're personally going to be involved in, and just industry-wide? What are the things that you're looking at for the next couple of years, 5 years, et cetera? And we'll close out on that.
Great. So in my older age, I'm almost 60. I have become very, very brave. So no, I actually do think it's a really good time. I had planned to transition out really as of last fall and was working from home more and more. And actually I had been one of Mr. Fenwick's messengers back when to get the firm to be paperless and would have what he called location independent access to everything. So I was used to through the firm's overall support of everybody being able to work from anywhere. I was used to doing that, and I had accelerated it last fall. And in January, late January, the arrangement I made with the firm, they said, "Look, just plan your next thing for the next 3 months. You're still here. You still use the website. You still do your speeches and this and that, but work on transitioning out." So I was already in a very good routine for 3, 4, 5 months, being at home most of the time or on the road. I did a lot of travel from '02 onwards. So just personally and in terms of routine and in terms of ability to use tools to be anywhere and be able to do work was really fostered by that firm and by my own curiosity about them. I was often a beta tester on a new VPN module or a new virtual desktop once you VPN in through VM Horizon View. Things like that. So I have a lot of skills and interest in tools. On the other hand, I now have to build that all from scratch. I spent today poking around on some web building tools that one of my tech company clients has recommended to me. I'm close to someone in marketing, and we're just helping each other out in various ways as just as goodwill, because it's a mutual admiration between my efforts and that tech company. And everything from that to domain names. I bought a few more yesterday. I've hired a firm that is searching for making sure that the names I'm interested in for my 3 entities that I'm going to start will work. I'm then going to have to talk to a trademark lawyer. So it's exciting. I'm not feeling rushed. So in a way, it is perfect timing, because I actually, as I was transitioning out, I had 3 leads. One was to be an expert witness on eDiscovery and write a huge declaration in a trademark case. That's not something I've been allowed to do at Fenwick. I'm not slamming the firm, but they didn't allow lawyers to be special masters or expert witnesses. That's completely on hold because it's a federal court case. That opportunity, I've gotten a call back, but it's on hold because the courts aren't doing things and the case is on hold. I had another inquiry in my transition period to do a records retention, big project for a nationwide retail set of retail stores. Well, retail stores aren't doing so well. So that's on hold. And right when we were going to have our first call, they said, "Hey, the whole legal department is dealing with COVID-related stuff. We're about to send all our employees out to work remotely." So the timing in a way is good, because once things change by the fall, or hopefully in the next month or two, I think people are going to start working in a way that I used to be working in, and they're going to need a lot of help on their information and on who to connect within the companies on how to do their information. When I've done these, again, what I call record retention multidisciplinary projects, I always insist on dealing with an IT person and hopefully an HR person and legal, and making sure they have buy-in from a CEO. Well, I'm skilled at getting all those kind of people on a call and on a video call. I've been doing that for years. I used to like to do the first meeting in person. That's not going to be reality for a while. So I think that in some ways, business is going to be really slow. I'm very, brutally aware people are not retaining outside people like they should. Well, like they should or would have if we hadn't been in this COVID situation. On the other hand, I don't feel pressure to ramp up in the next few weeks. That was the original plan. I probably will be official in the next few weeks, but I'm not feeling pressure. So it's kind of a weird combination of, hey, everything I've done in the past has converged anyway. My knowledge, my experience, and my energy level are really high. And now there's this whole other opportunity. So in terms of the second part, more granularly or drill down or whatever you want to call it, I do think that there are 2 things. One is in the law. I think that there really is not yet anything that's reining in the scope of discovery in lawsuits. And on the one hand, that's great for people like Tom and me who consult. Part of what we do is consult on eDiscovery. Sometimes all of what we do in a given week or month. And Tom's been doing that longer than I have, for sure. in a way it's counterintuitive. Well, gee, then we'll have less work. But I think that what we have now is really a mess still. I mean, there have been 2 rounds of changes to the federal rules, but I think they need to be changed again, and state rules along the same way, kind of along the lines of what that patent model rule order did a few years ago that the head of the Federal Circuit put out, where you were limited in at least in patent cases to only a few people's email, and then you even had to show a reason why you needed email. So that's, I think, more of a legal standard that I still am hopeful will change. It's taking a lot longer than I thought. And in the trenches, it's really what I tab the new and emerging technologies. There really are limited, and have been to this point, limited ways, both day to day and in terms of litigation downstream when the body's on the table, dealing with Slack or the like. And I have a connection to Slack. I did a broadcast with them, much like this one we're doing today, last fall. And it was hosted by Ona, who I also have a connection to just in terms of synergies. I have synergy with both those companies. They're not clients. They might be someday, but I'm not pushing for it. I just find that I've met people there where we have a similar interest. And Ona and Slack actually have a partnership. I don't know if it's formal or informal, none of my business, but the Ona day-to-day and in litigation has really strong APIs, including with Slack. And so companies like Ona, I'm just using that as an example because I've been doing a lot of broadcasts with them and basically cross-selling when you get right down to it. I know this is not a commercial, but I'm using them as an example because I feel really strongly about them, and I don't have any kind of financial tie to them. I'm just a fan, and it's a mutual admiration society. And I like the people I met at Slack. I got a virtual tour of some of their tools and a physical tour one day because I was trying to get to know my co-interviewee before the Ona person interviewed us. So I think things like Ona and Slack's willingness to work with Ona and work with, in other ways to make the tool more usable day to day and not saving everything and not having this big morass. And they've really made a lot of changes to make it more powerful, more multi-purpose than it already was. I think companies like those two, by way of example, and things we can't foresee, the more they have their eye on day-to-day and downstream in litigation, I think that's where there can be a lot of progress, and there needs to be a lot of progress, really, for companies and organizations of all shapes and sizes.
I think that, as a lot of these applications are coming into more and more use, and you don't have them being built necessarily with compliance in mind from the get-go, you do need to have the experts, and you need to have the people who actually understand it, who are going to help guide the rest of the industry. The attorneys aren't going to be able to get in there and just, let me pull out a PST and look at it, even if that's not the most efficient way, but at least it works. With Slack, you can't even do that. So
yeah, that's a really good reaction. And Wicker is another company I'd put in that category. Again, I have an informal connection, and both Ona and Slack have had me in part to pick my brain, each one at least once. And I just start talking about the pain points I had trying to work with other people at Fenwick to get everyone to use the tools and understand the reason behind the tools. So they felt like that was really good insight from a marketing standpoint, but also they don't have a way of knowing what lawyers do. So that kind of, you hit the nail on the head, I think. And things that I just take for granted because I've been trying to get people to change how they work for 20 years. They're really interested in that because they're already thinking in the same way. So I do think people like the three of us here and people at those three companies that first come to mind for me. Yeah, I think it needs to be someone needs to be able to get everyone together and do a mind meld kind of thing. Because otherwise it's the old lawyers are from Mars and IT are from Venus. So I didn't coin that phrase, the people at DOAR did, but I wrote an article a few years ago about with that title, and it said we need an interplanetary translator, and I had 3 columns and a table, and I had what a lawyer says, what an IT person says, what a human being what it means to actually do it. So I think that I'm not trying to be flip. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. There is a disconnect still between what lawyers do in the trenches and need and what they don't know. I mean, so they know what they know, but they often don't know. I feel like Brumsfeld. They're the known. There are a lot of unknowns for them. And only people like you guys who, you know, have come at this from different angles can really, you know, help bridge the gaps.
Cool. Well, Tom, take us out.
Rocky, that was great. Robert, thanks so much for the time. Great talking to you as always.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the time to chat. And Rocky, it was great to meet you.
You bet.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you,
Hey, take care.
you guys down the road, and you folks back in the eDiscovery channel for our next meeting, whenever that might be. Thanks so much.